This is Oren, and I want to talk to you about all the Oscar nominees. I'm just plowing through them. I just saw 3 in the last approximately 8 or 9 days. And this year's slate is really solid. The Oscars seem to know what they're doing. Last year, they were all whack. They nominated Vice, Black Panther, BlacKkKlansman, and Bohemian Rhapsody, 4 films that I did not think really deserved to be there. This year, I am really pleased. I actually I liked it, but I didn't love Marriage Story, but I can absolutely appreciate what it brings to the table as a curated list of 9 films that represent our year. And I just saw 1917, Parasite, and Little Women, and there's a lot to appreciate about all 3 of these films. 1917 is an absolute game changer of a movie. People have said it's the best war movie since Saving Private Ryan. Other than the beach scene of Saving Private Ryan, I don't think Saving Private Ryan has anything on this movie. 1917 is a technical masterpiece, first of all. It's shot, the one thing people probably know about it is that it's shot in a sort of a illusion of a one-take film where the camera is on the guy the whole time. But you also have to tell. There's also cinematographer Roger Deakins. Now, only like true cinematography nerds would know the names of any cinematographers on movies, but this guy is like a rock star. He's done all the best stuff from Shawshank Redemption to Blade Runner 2049, and he is, And so when he absolutely has like really floored imagery, and what's interesting is that I would say that the closest media experience to this movie is a video game. This is a year in which Martin Scorsese has compared movies, not to movies anymore, but theme park rides and video games. And this feels like a first-person shooter video game. It's absolutely, like, the imagery is so striking. The special effects, and this is a time when special effects, you see them all the time. Even stuff like Aquaman or Men in Black International has amazing special effects, but it doesn't necessarily make the movie great. This has special effects that are additive to the movie. In addition, there's an emotional journey. The film wouldn't be what it is without it's like a Joseph Campbell journey, and that, if it wasn't for that, the film wouldn't necessarily be that worth the price of admission. But it has that in spades. It says a lot about class. It says a lot about British society with the stiff upper lip attitude. And it also, one little concern I had about the movie is that it's slightly uneventful for the first 30 minutes until one of the soldiers gets buried in a pile of dirt. And I'm worried that in the age of streaming, if people watch it on DVD, which it's really more of a theater experience, people might turn it off and be like, this isn't for me. And that would be a shame because it's a great emotional journey. Now I want to talk about Parasite, which is like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or like a Terrence Malick film, a very thinky film. It's a very thought-provoking film about class, and it has so many details that are so wonderful. It's about 2 families. One family is a rich family, and a second family is a poor family. And the 2 mingle in a way that's most unconventional, in that the poor family is trying to get employment. One of them gets employment with the rich family, and he decides to bring in his sister and get her a gig. Instead of bringing her dad, get him a gig as a limousine driver, and then get the mom a gig as a housekeeper. In order to do that, in order to get their parents gigs, they have to start to resort to bad, malignant actions, such as, firing the existing housekeeper, getting her fired through false pretenses, getting the limousine driver through false pretenses. Without knowing the context of Korea, this would seem like this is ridiculous. Just tell them that, hey, my mom's a great housekeeper. But what ends up happening is that, one thing I didn't know is that there's a humongous amount of reputation and face, and in terms of, it's not considered good form to hire someone who's not professional, and these people had sort of faked their credentials at every turn anyway. This is also a film where, the director, who also directed Snowpiercer, and he's South Korean, and he's really has a chance to be the first South Korean to be nominated to win a Best Director here, and that would be wonderful for a country that's always producing great films. He talked about how it's this sort of upstairs downstairs brand that you see in 1939's Rules of the Game or Gosford Park or Downton Abbey isn't necessarily about the rich versus the poor. It's sometimes about the middle poor versus the lower poor. It's all symbolized in this basement, in this semi-basement, which is where these guys have sort of a slight view of society, but not a complete view of society, and the sort of intermediate status that this family has. It's symbolic all the way through and through. It's absolutely, at times it's very, there are very few moments where it's not full of anticipation or interest. It starts off a bit slow. I mean, it's a subtitled film, so some of the nuances you have to wonder about when it happens, but I absolutely thought this was also up there with a really profound film. It's getting an amazing reviews. Also, Little Woman by Greta Gerwig stars Emma Watson from Harry Potter and Saoirse Ronan and a couple of lesser knowns, as well as Laura Dern as the mother, who's having a great year, and who doesn't love Laura Dern. I had some hesitations about this film, I'll have to admit. I felt it was like a female-centered story that wasn't for me, and when I started watching it, I just decided I had to watch by myself. I was really hesitant, but I decided, you know what, it's $6 Tuesday, I'll take a chance. And it's a film that is, it was pretty torturous at first, but, you know, once it hooks you, it's definitely a moving story. It reminds me of the vignettes of Meet Me in St. Louis, where things are kind of sequestered into stories and little side stories, and everyone has their own arc. It could really easily be like a 6-part miniseries, and at one point, it was in one of the many incarnations of the Louisa May Alcott book. It's a miniseries, but the narrative is well-rounded into a story, and it has a lot to say. Partially, it has a lot to say about courtship. It's a commentary. I mean, it's definitely a modern commentary where the characters are very self-aware of their role as women are self-aware of their role as their limitations. I'm not sure if that is historically accurate, and how marriage might be one of their might be one of their only or best options. And it has a sort of conclusion about. It has a playful conclusion about whether marriage is the be-all, end-all of your problems. That certainly makes the movie really feel kind of complete. It also talks about, you know, it also romanticizes and comments on the kind of courtship that would exist a century or a century and a half ago, whereas today people would say meet on the dance floor and grind, or meet on Tinder. You know, this was a time where I would say that there's probably a certain number of female viewers who would romanticize this courtship, but maybe also comment on how much it's hard to suppress your feelings. But it's also a film about it's simply a joyful film. The screenwriter, obviously, and director Greta Gerwig is a humongous fan of this book, and it's you can tell the joy in the characters. There's not any really evil characters or anything like that. I've recently, my family and another family have befriended in the last few years, and they have 3 sisters and they're age 20 to 25, and they have this kind of really crazy bond. It's awesome to witness, and I see it in the movie, and it's really a really great thing to have, to be a woman and have 3 sisters, I would imagine. And that's really apparent in the movie too. The film also has a really solid performance from Chris Cooper, who never really ever gets to play a warm person. Lastly, I just want to do just a quick shout out to the movie Judy, which I saw, and I'm gonna say blah. It might win best actress, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good picture. It felt like a made-for-TV movie. It was oversaturated with musical numbers that were very static. They didn't necessarily. There wasn't any camera work or anything cinematic about any of the musical numbers. They felt superfluous. A couple of them, like Get Happy or the trolley song, or obviously Somewhere Over the Rainbow, you wanted to hear but it was mostly an excuse for, I guess, Renee Zellweger to sing. She obviously acts well, but I don't know if it told the complete story of Judy. It alluded to parts of Judy that were, it alluded to better stories. I wanted to see the story of Judy as a young person that would who was getting hooked on drugs by the studio. and being sort of abused. That would have been a great story. This is a story of a woman who... This is like one of the least interesting chapters of her life. I guess the idea of her being a mother was kind of interesting, but it had a somewhat of decent through line. I guess you could see, if you wanted to see a struggling character have some sort of happy ending, I guess, a rather bittersweet earned happy ending, I guess. There was sort of a bittersweet moment where at least she got her last bout on the stage. But I mean, you'd have to be a Judy obsessive to really care about this chapter in her life. The film doesn't necessarily make it more appealing than history did, and it's also been covered before in a lot of other miniseries and films. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great day.